guys, how's it going? Today we are going to be working on dividing a bunch of perennials. We've got some ornamental alliums and oregano, some grasses, hardy geraniums that I'd like to get divided. So I just wanted to talk through that process. We're out here in the flower shed because it seems like there's heavy machinery working on all sides of us this morning. Everybody was excited to get out and start working because it is beautiful. I think it's supposed to be close to 70 today, so this vest is not going to last for long. Anyway, I think the most fun part about dividing perennials is that you get to increase the amount of perennials you have out in your garden for free. There are some types that like to be divided every couple of years, some that you can go several years, like 5, 6, 7 years before they need to be divided, but you'll kind of notice your perennials that, especially the ones that clump out, sometimes they'll stop being quite as productive. They won't produce as many flowers, or they'll start dying out in the center or along the edges. A lot of ornamental grasses will do that. So dividing your plants not only increases the amount that you have in your garden, but it also helps rejuvenate your plants. It helps give all the pieces that you keep and plant room for root growth. It gives them better airflow. Those that get really congested can kind of rot in the center, especially if you live in a humid, wet climate. So it just helps spread everything out and gives everything a chance to breathe. And the other nice thing is that it does help control the size of the plant. Some plants will just keep kind of going and going and going and going, and they'll start taking over if you don't keep their size in check. And sometimes you want that, but sometimes you don't. And spring is the best time to divide and transplant most perennials. Of course, there are always exceptions. I know there are some things like bearded iris, oriental poppies, peonies, creeping phlox, the things that bloom in the spring. If they're just getting ready to bloom, probably not a great thing to go out and dig them up and separate them and kind of shock the plant system because, my window's flying open. Oh, it's so nice outside though. Anyway, if you dig those things up right now, you might forfeit the blooms. They might just think like, no, I don't have the energy to put into these blooms. Instead, we need to focus on root growth, and then, they don't bloom either very profusely or at all. But most everything else, it's a great time to get out and divide. In fact, I'm even a little bit late. The things I'm working on today already have some pretty good looking growth on them. If you can get after your perennials when they're a little bit shorter, like, 2-3 inches, you can see where the nice robust looking growth is, and you can see where the plant's starting to die out, which I will show you. Like an ornamental grass, it looks great on one side but not great on the other side. Also, the best time to do this project is on an overcast day, which we clearly do not have today, just because when you dig your plants up and you expose them to sun and air and that sort of thing, they can dry out really quickly. So you either need to get after your project quick and get it done like we're gonna do today, or wait for an overcast day. The only other thing is maybe just talking about which perennials benefit from being divided, which ones should be divided every few years, with the caveat that I do not divide perennials if they're still blooming nicely, if they still look nice and lush and full, even if it's been 5, 6, 7 years plus years. If it's even been longer than that, as long as the plant still looks good and is growing well, I do not mess with them. I don't divide them just to divide them unless I want to spread them around, which I don't all the time. I just wait for perennials that look stressed, that look like they're starting to thin out and just aren't looking the best. That's what we're gonna be dealing with today. Also, it looks so beautiful out here. I don't know if you guys can see all the color on the orchard floor, but the bulbs have just started to come up and bloom, and they're looking so beautiful and sweet. Oh, I gotta close this though, or I'll forget. Okay, we're out here in the south garden. We've got an ornamental oregano right here that I planted 2 seasons ago. Look at the center of this plant. I mean, if you get way down in here, you can see a little bit of green growth, but not much. Most of it is coming up right here along the edges. So we're gonna kind of dig all of this up and separate out the good stuff and discard the stuff that's not good anymore. We're also going to be digging up and separating several of these serendipity alliums. They grow a little bit taller than I want them to right here at the edge of a bed anyway. So I think I'm gonna leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're gonna dig up 5 of these, separate them, and move them around. And that way we'll have enough space to put in something a little bit lower as more of a graduated step down before you get to the grass pathway. And for those of you who are just new to dividing perennials and you feel a little bit nervous about it, just know that plants are so resilient, and most of the time they thank you for dividing them and spreading them around, unless they are a type, which looked on the list below, that don't like to be transplanted or moved or divided, and there are a few, but most of them will thank you. There's Erin and the kids. This is where one of the machines is moving. Can you hear that beeping? They're building a house right there. Anyway, let's tackle this ornamental oregano first. The tools I'm going to be using today, I've got a shovel here, a kneeling pad, some starter fertilizer, the Biotone, and then also a garden knife. One of you guys sent this out to me and I love it. It's so sharp. I use it for all kinds of things like harvesting cabbage and broccoli, things like that, where you kind of need to get into the plant and do some cutting. And anyway, a lot of people like to use a hori-hori knife, which they're a little bit straighter of a blade, but they have a serrated edge, and that's helpful for kind of like sawing the root ball apart if you need to. We're gonna start with the shovel though. So I've just gone all the way around the perimeter of this perennial and loosened up the root ball, but this is a huge clump right here. I can't lift this whole thing out, so I'm gonna use my shovel and cut it into pieces so I can lift it out, take it over to the gator, and kind of assess the situation. If I can cut it with my shovel. Oh, I cut a drip line. That's why it was so hard to dig. Ugh. I got it out in 3 separate pieces. I also managed to cut a drip line that I'm going to have to come repair. These will be a lot easier because we can dig the entire plant out all in one fell swoop and then kind of look at it and make our cuts afterward. But as we look at these pieces, these right here, you can see all the roots underneath them. They look really good. And I think what I'm going to do is cut this piece here. You can also pull any weeds out. There's some grass growing. Look at this. Whoa. Grass growing throughout. Also right here along the edges. But if I look closer into this particular piece, I see a bunch of new green shoots in there. So I think we can plant this piece and still get a nice plant from it. But then when we look at this one, it looks like, and I hope you guys can see, I know this camera is not the best at close-ups, but there are some green shoots on this side of the root ball, and then of course right here. But as I'm looking through this section, I don't see any green at all. It's all brown and sort of dead looking. So we'll probably carve off this section here and then discard the back dead section. And then all of this looks pretty good right here, except for the weeds, grass. And I'll be using this knife to make my divisions quick. Look at how beautiful that is. It smells amazing too. And you could take this one and divide it even further if you wanted. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. Already have 2 brand new clumps. I'm gonna put them on the shady side here. Cut this one in half. Nice healthy looking roots. Some green growth in there. So 2 more plants. All right, here's one. We're all done dividing, and I know it's hard to tell because it just looks like a mess in here, but there's our clump that we're gonna discard, and then we got 9 divisions from that one plant. We don't always end up with that many divisions. It depends on what kind of plant you're dealing with. Like the alliums will probably divide into quarters or maybe thirds. But in this case, we planted 1 oregano and ended up with 9 plants. That's pretty awesome. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And the variety we're dealing with here, it's called Drops of Jupiter. And it's a beautiful oregano. It has a very mild, very kind of pleasing smell. Mauve flowers, chartreuse leaves, grows about 2 feet tall, about 3 feet wide in the end. And the pollinators love it. I think it's a zone maybe 4 through 8 or 9. I think 4 through 9. Anyway, we need to go get this in the ground and get it watered in. I think that's the most important thing here when you're dividing, is keeping your divisions well watered, especially if you're dealing with wind, which it's a breezy day today, and sun and warming temperatures. We're on the back side of the south garden loop here. This is where we just dug up and transplanted our irises, which we had to move. There are those instances, like with the bearded iris, that they're better off being divided and moved in the fall, but in this case I had to do it last week because we have a project going on right where these were, and it was either lose these or move them. So I'm not expecting blooms from these this year. They just need to sit here and root in, and please just stay happy. But this is the space we're gonna pop this oregano in, just right in here. I just want a nice little drift along the back of this lane. We'll use our fertilizer and our shovel. Let's dig 9 holes. Just kidding, we're gonna move down the way just a bit. I realized that I have 3 spirea I planted right here that also have chartreuse foliage. They're starting to break dormancy right now. See that kind of yellowy foliage? That would be too much yellow right here. Let's go down by the sting arborvitae. Everything is green in this area. We've got a lilac there, the stings, we've got some hollyhocks, red fox katsura. I think they'd be much better right in here because they'll show up. And it does look shaded now because of this beautiful line of trees right behind me, but that's because the sun hasn't made its way up to its summer position yet. Once it's more straight up in the sky, this area is just nailed with sun, which is what this oregano likes. And they also like soil on the dry side once established. So they're a real great one that way. Now the next thing I do before I even plant them in the ground is to make sure to saturate these root balls. Like really just saturate them. It's going to make it a little bit more messy to plant with, or plant in rather, but I want to introduce them to a nice moist new home to start off with at least. Okay, look at that, nice and moist. I just feel like that's a really important step. That way you know the entire root ball is moist going into its new home, so we're going to tuck them in and then water them again. Doesn't look like much now, but it actually looks like it's coming up naturally in that spot. And then you may run into a situation where the main part of the root ball is right here, but you've got these little shoots that have come out and there's roots attached to those as well. And I'm just gonna kind of tuck them in, even if some of the leaves get buried. I just wanna make sure those roots aren't exposed to air. 7 more to go. Little hard to see, but they are all tucked in, all watered in, should be good to go. We'll have to run a drip line through here, but there's one, I can see it right there. So we'll run just one right through the center here and they should be good with that. And when you consider that that came from one, so you go out and buy one plant and then a couple years later you can change that into 8 new ones on top of that one you initially bought. It's like over $100 in savings right there, I guess depending on the size of plant, but that one that went in was like maybe a 2-gallon plant. I'm really happy with that. Okay, so the other examples I want to show you today are the ornamental alliums, a great big ornamental grass in front of our house. Some of you know exactly which one I'm talking about. And then there's some hardy geraniums in the garden by the pond that we need to move. Let's go back to the ornamental alliums first. And there they are, 4 nice looking clumps. I decided just to dig 4 rather than 5 because when I got in here, I think that the 6 that I left look really nice right in here, and we've got just enough space to come in with something else. We'll have to fill up these holes that I just created. But when you look in close at a couple of these clumps, this is a really good example of what some perennials will start to do. See that little gap right in there? So it used to look more like this one, very uniform all the way around. But as perennials start to grow and kind of clump out and get thicker, little patches of them will start thinning out and looking like that. So that patch would just only grow from the stage it's in right now. You can see there's one in this clump as well. Not quite as uniform anymore. And if you're dividing a perennial just to make sure it stays healthy, you still want that perennial in the location, but you just need to get some of it out. Oftentimes I don't dig up the whole plant. The only benefit of digging up the whole plant is you can really assess the root system and make sure that each piece that you're replanting has a nice set of roots below the canopy. But most of the time I just take my shovel and hack away half the plant. Dig up half the plant, cut it right down the center usually, and things go pretty well that way. But in this case, I needed to move the plants entirely because both the allium and the oregano got too tall for the spots where I had it. So what I'm gonna do is take my shovel once we get it sorted in the location where I want it. And I'm going to probably make a cut right down the center, and then we'll make another cut. So we'll just quarter these things up. And I do not have any allium on the other side of the south garden, so that's where we're heading. Oh, my coffee's gonna spill. Okay, I've got sedum in here. There's a couple of echinacea, but I keep trying to plant that royal raspberry. I think that's what it's called. Royal raspberry agastaki. I've tried it twice in this location. It dies every single time. So we're gonna go in with some alliums. Tried and true. Okay, first division. Boom. And there you have it, 4 brand new pieces from that one plant, which some of these, I feel like that one could be separated again, but I want to keep them, you know, decent sized. And we're just going to fill in this area right in here. I don't know how many it's going to take. A few. 9 new alliums. Oh, it's gonna look so pretty. This area we have not mulched yet, so it's looking a little rough. You can see a lot of the drip lines, but it's gonna fill in beautifully. I've got the Cat's Pajamas Nepeta right here, which will stay lower. And then the Bit of Honey Heliopsis, which is a variegated leaf, kind of white and green, and has a bright yellow flower. So it'll look really pretty with the purple allium. And then we'll have the random yellow echinacea that pops up. There's one right here, and I think 2 right over there. So it won't look like such a chunk of alliums with those plants popping up. And then sedum right in front of that. In fact, we just planted this one and then a few others right over here. We split them in half and planted them over here, what was it, a week or 2 ago? And I've got 1 full allium and a half. So one of the bunches out there, the one closest to the hose, it was just a half. I decided to do a little bit of a bigger piece right there. That's pretty good. So let's go find a spot for those. This might be a good spot. These really do look great right here. And you can see the beautiful peonies coming up. There's 3 of them in this area that are coral. And then we have a, is it Lilac Days rose right beyond the alliums. And there's a Hillside Upright Norway spruce. This one is a Jolene Beautyberry. Beautyberry Jolene. Let me look it up. It's a Jolene Beauty Bush. I was close. And then there's a Lemon Squeeze Pennisedum right there. It's going to be really pretty purple summer color. I love it. Those 4 alliums turned into 14 plants. Let's go tackle the big ornamental grass next. Okay, we're right up here at the front of the house. This is a huge Cabaret Miscanthus. When we moved in, it was already here, so it's a very established old grass. And you can see what starts to happen here. This was not divided, or I haven't divided it in the last however long it's been. Are we entering our 8th season here? I think so. 7th season? Anyway, it's an older grass, and you can see that half of it is gone. It's dead. And there's one really strong patch, and then one that's kind of weak, but it might do something. So I'm thinking that we dig this up. We carve out this section right here because that's a really nice look. And this section may or may not come back quite as strong, but we can give it a shot. This side we'll discard for sure. Oh my goodness, I had to call in some muscle to help me with that one. Paul had to come in to cut the grass in half because I could barely make my shovel go in. I did decide to leave one bit of it. So we left the nice section and that one can just fill back in. I need to bring in a little bit more compost to level up this area, but I think this one will do well now that it's free from all the rest of the stuff that was around it. And then this is the piece that we will plant out in the south garden. I think that's where it's gonna go. We're gonna head back out that direction. But all of this stuff, it just popped right out. Like it was done. Yeah, that's what it looked like underneath. You can see a drip tube from I don't know when. I don't think we put that one in. Oh my goodness. Before we head out to the south garden though, I do want to run and grab the last plant, which is a hardy geranium back by the pond. That way we can get them planted both in one fell swoop. Oh, that last one, that made me out of breath. My goodness. All right, pond is right over there. And then we've got a flower bed that used to be backed by a white fence before we were able to buy this property. There was a grapevine, some other things that we've moved. Angelica, which I am not moving to another area of my garden. The Angelica is like mint. Oh my goodness, it'll take over and it gets huge. It's a really pretty plant, but you have to have a spot where you can either contain it or let it roll, because I'm not gonna fight it. But we've got some real small, low growing geranium right here, and I love hardy geraniums. I am a huge, huge fan. So I'd like to get these, like this patch here and this patch, which we will be able to divide. And you can see like little, like here's a nice little plant right here, and we'll be able just to create lots of nice little pieces. Also, do you see what's going on in the distance over there? So a crew showed up this morning to start excavating a spot for a play set for the kids. So we decided to just make this play central because you know the basketball / tennis court right there. The kids have roller skates that they can skate around on that big concrete pad, and then right off of that we'll have the play set, and I think we're going to bury a trampoline, you know, do a hole and sink a trampoline down in, and then we'll have a seating area, probably a fire bowl over there. It just will be a really fun area for the kids to have friends over and play. And maybe at the end of this video we'll leave you with a little time lapse of what they got done today. I just plan on showing you guys day by day what they're doing. I think they should be done probably by the end of the week, but it's a job. They're having to remove all the sod right now. Thank goodness for big machines, right? But for now, let's get this geranium all dug up. Got it all dug up. It came up really easily. And if you wanted to, I mean, you could go through this. There's a ton of small plants, kind of like strawberries. Look at that. And you could separate this into just a ton of plants. So long as each division had enough roots still attached, boy, that small patch, a seemingly small patch, can turn into a giant patch really quickly. I think I'd like the grass to go in somewhere right here, near where we started with the oregano this morning, because I don't really have an ornamental grass. All the grassy texture you see out there, they're all daffodils and they'll go away after a little while. So it'd be nice to have a grassy texture that's big right back here. And the grass does get big, like taller than me when I'm 5'4". And if you look at the blades here, they are just so beautiful. And they do get bigger than this. Like they'll get, you know, good sized blades. So it's a very bold look. And I love the creamy white variegation. I'm hopeful that this piece just takes off. About right here, I guess. That looks awesome right there. And this variety, I'd have to look it up to be sure, but I want to say it gets about 3 to 5 feet wide and then 5 to 7 feet tall, right around in that range. So it has a presence in the garden. You don't need more than one, that's for sure. Usually the bigger the grass gets, the fewer you need to make an impact. And you know, since we're right in this area where the hose is all strung out and we need ground cover out here, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and pop the geraniums in right behind me underneath these Arctic Fire red dogwoods on this side of them. Like starting in right on this side, I hesitate to put them around here. And eventually we'll put something in here that's a little bit more steppable because I want to be able to access these boxes and not have to worry about what you're stepping on. And we do pull this hose straight in between, like between these dogwoods either way, to water annuals last year that we had planted out here, and also to water newly planted stuff this way. And if we need to go this way, we usually just pull it along the lane. So we're not going to be walking right in here, which is perfect. So with these, most of them, like look at this, most of them you can just ease apart by hand. There's one nice piece. I think I'm going to keep them in, maybe we'll do one more on this. Yeah, because that's got kind of a natural split right there. And if you can't ease it apart, we can start cutting. Yeah, I think that'll work. There's a landscape staple right there. Look how beautiful that is. This one doesn't have as many roots, but I think it'll still be all right. In fact, look at this. There's one with a root, another one. There's another with the root there. Another one with plenty of roots, and another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants out of just that one little piece. Wow. You kind of find natural divides in there. See that right there? There we go. Oh my. Woo! Perfect. There's 2 right there, nice ones. Just gonna leave this one alone. Oh, look at that. Awesome. One more clump. I'll leave that one. I'm not sure how many divisions we ended up with, but a lot. Some of them I left a little bit bigger if they just didn't feel like they would naturally come apart very easily. And some of them are quite a lot smaller, like this right here. But given plenty of moisture, this one will be fine. It might just take a little longer to root in and take off, you know, as opposed to something like this. It has a ton more roots, but yeah, I am thrilled. Look at that. It's beautiful. It'll be fun to see how far they stretch in this area. So I'm just gonna start digging holes and let's get them in the ground and get them watered in. Look at this, 35 divisions, 35 plus. I'm not counting the holes that I planted like 3. The smaller divisions, I planted like 3 per hole. There's 2 in that hole right there. But isn't that amazing? So that one little clump is now, I mean, what was it taking up? Like a 2x2 section in the last flower bed? Now it's filling up this whole big area. And that for me is one of the most fun parts about dividing perennials, is seeing how far just a couple of plants divided can take you in another space in the garden for free, minus the labor and the time it takes you. But that's what we enjoy doing, right? Like that's the best part about gardening, is just being out here doing it. So if we can be out here doing the thing we love and filling up our gardens for free, essentially at the same time, that's just the most amazing thing. Now these, of everything we moved today, these will wilt. Just expect it, keep watering them, and oftentimes it just takes them a little bit to root in and then they'll pick up and keep growing. I've moved lots of perennials throughout the years, but whenever I move perennial geraniums, it always seems to be at the wrong time when the leaf canopies are much bigger. This one we're getting after a lot sooner. But last year I moved some like middle of the season, and the tops immediately like flat as a pancake, totally wilted, and then they dried up and it looked like the plant was dead, but I just kept watering it, and it, sure enough, after it was a few weeks later, it started to sprout new green leaves and it took off and it's looking great. It's in the corner by the dumpster over there on that side. And that is it for our project today. I mean, there's certainly more things we could go through and divide and spread around, but these were the ones I wanted to tackle today, which makes me so happy. And then we will leave you with whatever we were able to capture of the kids' play area. I don't know all the steps that are going to be involved. I think today they're excavating, and I hear that little leveler out there, so they're just getting everything nice and prepared. I think there's a little, I don't know if it's a wood border going in. We're not doing a fancy border because I know we're going to redefine the edges, if that makes sense, and then we're going to do a brick border. So right now I think they're just doing a rectangle. Then they're going to do landscape fabric down underneath, so we're not dealing with weeds. I don't want to spray in that area, and I don't want to pull weeds. So, and then they'll put in the play set and then the mulch. So they think they'll be done by the end of the week, but we will leave you with whatever they get done every day this week. That's what we'll leave you with at the end of the videos. So thank you so much for watching Dividing Perennials today. I hope it was helpful, especially for those of you who have never done it before, and we will do more of it later on. Thank you again, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.